I see us. Let's see, and then we are ready to go.
Francesca, I see you, but I don't think anybody can see me.
I don't see you, but I hear you, so that's already very good. That's already very, very good, but let's see if we also see you. Maybe the technical team can help us. It would be nice to see you also on the other screens. But first of all, Gladys, thanks for joining us. We miss you, but it's good that at least you managed to connect. Oh, the camera on your side, maybe? Do you want to? Here you are. Okay, we see you. We see you. And is there a way for us to see her also on the other screens so that?
Might be difficult.
Maybe difficult. That's fine. If it's not possible, then we'll turn. Give us just 1 second. Oh, something is happening.
Huh?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we are good to go. So again, just as a way to get us started, we decided to start a technical discussion with a not so technical discussion. So we put together some key speakers to lead us into the why we need migration data, what are the key priorities, policy priorities, research priorities for which we need data. So a little bit of the what we need to produce, maybe touching also a little bit on what are the current data gaps, knowing that the how we produce this data will be covered by all of us, all of you in the next sessions over the 4 days. Before I introduce our fantastic speakers, maybe from my side, I just want to remind us, very much in line with what we touched on during the opening section, that migration statistics are highly in demand. There are many global commitments that countries have ratified. We touched on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that requires data disaggregated, highly disaggregated, and this intersectional approach in the data that we produce. We touched on the GCM, the Global Compact on Migration. So these are all additional requirements, data requirements that have put some additional stress, I would say, on national statistical systems. So we'll try to touch on that too. So in this context, let us start by first introducing speakers. I think I just introduced all of you, and then we have already prepared a few questions. And I'll go through the questions and we see how we can stimulate some dialogue. First, among the 5 of you, including, of course, Gladys, who is joining us virtually. And then we should also have some time to engage with the floor. So please pay attention, write down your questions, and then I would really like to hear from you too. Questions, not for me, but for our speakers. Okay, so we have with us, I'm very pleased to have Magdalena Kozlowska, Magda, who is the head of Migration Analysis and Statistics Division at the Office for Foreigners in Poland. She is responsible for the planning and coordination of the collection, processing, and analysis of data concerning managed migration and international protection. Magda collaborates with representatives from various sectors, and I'm sure you'll elaborate on that, to advance statistical and analytical work in the migration field. And Magda also oversees the operations of the Migration Analytical Center. So all important points that she will further explain. We have James Reimer on my left, who is a professor of demography at the Australian National University. His research focuses on developing methodologies and analytical frameworks to study demographic processes. He has engaged in many interdisciplinary and international research collaborations on topics ranging from statistical estimation of migration to population forecasting. We have Gladys Cisneros, who is joining us virtually, who is the chief of the labor migration branch at ILO in Geneva. She worked closely with different stakeholders to promote fair and effective labor migration policies. And I found it interesting, so I'm going to mention that before joining the ILO, Gladys was the first director and special advisor on international labor at the National Security Council in the White House in the US, where she contributed to policy development and international labor relations. So Gladys also has a lot to contribute to this discussion, to this dialogue between data users and data producers. We have Diego Iturralde, also on my left. Diego is the Chief Director for Demography and Population Statistics at Statistics South Africa. He's a member of many expert groups on international migration statistics. And on my right, we have Dominique Roskroet. Perfect. I ask your colleagues. How to pronounce your name, who is the president of Statistics Poland, and it's a great honor to have him with us this morning and hopefully also during the week if you can afford to stay a little bit with us. So president of Statistics Poland since 2016, but also very much engaged and active in the academia because Dominique is also a professor at the University of Szczecin. So thank you very much. Let's start with the first set of questions. And I'm going to start with you, Magda, if that's okay. So as the head of the Migration Analysis and Statistics Division in the Office for Foreigners in Poland, what are the priority policy issues on international migration? Thank you.
Well, Poland is in the moment in the process of preparing migration strategy for 2025-2030. And we have to include all aspects of migration. Of course, our migration situation is at the moment dominated by the consequences of the war in Ukraine. But at the same time, we have humanitarian crisis on the Polish-Belarusian border. We have a huge influx of labor migrants. And as a country of a member of European Union, we have to also involve, and we are obligated to fit all European standards to our migration policy. So, of course, by preparation of this strategy, very important is to find correct, good quality statistical data, which are crucial by analyzing and determining all migration phenomena which are going on in Poland. And we will end with the works of strategy this end of this year before we will take over the presidencies in the Council of European Union starting from January 2025.
Thank you, Magda. So just getting back to you. So how did this migration strategy was thought of? So who was the driver? Who initiated it? Is it your office? And maybe also a little bit how the two offices work together, right? You represent both Poland.
The main issue is in the Ministry for Interior. So we are just participating in this, but there is a governmental team which is working on this, and many ministers and offices which are involved in creation of this strategy. And at the same time, there are some people from academia and NGOs, and a lot of experts dealing with migration has their voice to find priorities, to find some solutions for challenges which we are having at the moment. So the Ministry of Interior is the main actor, but there are many people supporting them in this work.
And from the Office of Foreigners, do you feel you are also have a voice in deciding what needs to be monitored, or you feel that you are more on the data producer side, like you are responding to some data needs?
I think both.
You play the both.
We are quite important actor in creating policy, but also the source of the statistical data.
Okay, very good. And sorry, I keep bugging you, but so Office of Foreigners, what's the definition? Is it foreigners because they are non-citizens, or they are foreigners because they were foreign born?
Because they are foreigners, they're not Polish citizens, yeah?
Non-Polish?
Not
okay.
Polish citizens.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Good. So I'm gonna let you rest for a little bit, but I'll come back. So, and please do take notes for your questions for Magda later on. So let's move to Gladys, who is sitting in Geneva, I hope comfortably. Gladys, as the chief of the labor migration branch, so from the perspective of ILO, could you talk about the key priority policy issues on international migration, of course, highlighting the perspective of labor migration as a data user? And yeah, can you tell us do you get the data that you need for your analysis? Thank you.
Thank you so much for these questions, and it's very much a pleasure to address these policy areas on international migration from the perspective of labor migration data usage. Indeed, this is a critical area for the ILO, as we're engaged both in rigorous analysis and in the practical application of data to improve policy, but more than that, to improve policy outcomes. I think the first point I'd like to begin with is as a clear affirmation that we do receive every year valuable data, invaluable data on international labor migration from our member states. The International Labor Organization disseminates this data globally through our International Labor Migration Statistics database, which now stands as the world's largest and most robust repository of labor migration statistics, which is crucial for policymakers and researchers alike, as this provides important and comprehensive insights into migration trends and their implications. The data submitted by countries is instrumental in our periodic publication of the ILO Global Estimates on International Migrant Workers, which has come to really serve as a cornerstone for advocacy and for policymaking across various levels. In terms of addressing the question on whether we get all the data that we need, I would point out that there are some significant gaps and some challenges. First, international statistical standards must be updated or further developed to reflect the complexity and the current policy demands related to labor migration. Origin countries, for example, they lack data on remittances, brain drain, on fair recruitment practices and working conditions of their nationals abroad. They lack data on social insurance coverage and labor market reintegration for their returnees. In terms of destination countries, they require more robust data on forecasting labor shortages and skill needs, integrating migrants into their own labor markets, and also very important for the ILO on preventing exploitation of migrant workers. Furthermore, I'd point out there are essential policy questions that require attention. And again, because we are so attuned to really getting this right, addressing those policy questions means we need data. We need to understand better the economic contributions of migrant workers and the kinds of economic activities that they're engaging in, the frequency and duration of their migrations, and the broader impacts on both labor markets and economic development. Equally important, I would say, is assessing the effectiveness of migration policies and ensuring fair recruitment and more broadly decent work for all migrant workers. There are persistent research gaps in understanding the dynamics of short-term migration flows, particularly in cross-border, circular, and seasonal labor market opportunities, and in evaluating the effectiveness of policy interventions aimed at protecting migrant workers' rights. Internationally, detailed data on the scope, scale, and geographic distribution of international labor migration is crucial. This includes sociodemographic characteristics, skills recognition, labor force participation rates, occupations, working conditions and earnings, migration costs, and again, importantly, economic contributions, including in the form of remittances. This data is indispensable for designing and evaluating policies that promote fair and sustainable labor migration practices globally. So again, I would note that we've made strides in gathering essential national data on labor migration that is important, again, for all countries involved in labor migration cycles, but we do have work that needs to be done that would be valuable for institutions such as my own, but again, very much for the constituencies that we serve. Addressing these data gaps is going to be critical to enhancing our understanding and for effectively addressing the challenges and the opportunities that are presented by international labor migration. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Gladys. And I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to get back to some of the topics, the points that you made. Of course, it's an opportunity for us as the international community to thank our member states for sending the data first and foremost, but also we acknowledge that there is still some knowledge gaps, data gaps, and you gave us a very good overview of these important dimensions for which the data are very scarce or unavailable. I think that you touched a little bit on what are the essential data gaps, but we should also further elaborate on that, right? Because the shopping list is huge. I think it's also our responsibility to prioritize and sort of rank and really help countries to focus on what are the key must-have, right? There is a wish list. We want everything, but where do we start? What are the basic things that every country should be able to produce in this context of labor migration? And from our perspective, even more broadly, when we talk about international migration and temporary mobility. So thank you so much. Stay with us. I'll get back to you in a little bit. But let's move to our third speaker, and it's our friend James Raymer, Professor of Demography. So James brings in the academia, the researchers' perspective to this dialogue between users and producers. So from your side, what are the priority research questions? Maybe if you can touch also, we start talking about not just the problems, also a little bit of the solutions. So how can statistical measures be improved? What do you think we should do? And maybe you also want to touch on some of the data gaps. That's part of the general discussion this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. It's great to be here with you all. So it's a real pleasure to be invited to join this discussion. Yeah, I'd probably even stronger on this idea that migration data is deficient. I think it's highly deficient, that we don't have good information on even the most basic measures of migration. And if you wanted to understand labor migration, you can't put it in the context of overall migration. We do have better information on stocks, but even that's not perfect. It usually comes from countries with censuses, but how often are censuses conducted? Once every 10 years, not at the same time, even the same time in the year. So, but I think our biggest problem has to do with, just understanding how many people are moving, migrating, changing their country of residence across the international borders. And we don't know for most countries in the world, vast majority, especially outside Europe, what these movements are. Even within Europe, say, give an example, migration from Germany to Poland, the story changes depending on if you ask Poland for the data or you ask Germany. You get two different stories about what the migration pattern is. And it has to do with how the data are collected. So yeah, so I'd definitely reinforce that. Major problem is that most good migration data are collected from administrative sources. But administrative sources are not designed to collect migration data, right? They have another purpose in mind, whether it's for a health register, a tax register, a population register. So you always have to think about what is migration in relation first to the administrative register and then whatever other purpose you want to use the migration data for. But in terms of improvements, I mean, of course, I've been involved in this, or I have been, or maybe you don't know, but I've been involved with the Extra Group for some time now, and I'm a strong believer that the new conceptual framework will make a huge difference. So if you put migration in the context of something, in this case, we started with a demographic accounting, population. So migration is a change in the country of where you live. That's an important starting point. So thinking about placing migration, not just think about migration in isolation, but migration as part of a system, whether it's a population system, an economic system, what have you. Second thing is, I really believe that countries should invest or improve their administrative systems. This is the way forward. And it could be all sorts of registers. There's lots of good ones, but the best migration data comes from population registers, from border control statistics, but even healthcare registers, education registers, asylum seeker registers, they all have important things to add. And the third thing that is probably more pragmatic, but also has a lot of possibilities, is using data integration methods. In combining data, ideally from my perspective, from different administrative registers, but it could incorporate census or survey data. And this will be both an efficient and a cost-effective way, I think, going forward, rather than trying to gather the most, ideal migration data. I think that's out of scope in the next 20 years or so. So I'll stop there. There are lots of data gaps, but.
Thank you so much, and you are also efficient in your answers. So yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for all the hard work in developing the conceptual framework. James was really the mastermind behind what has been adopted by the Statistical Commission a few years ago. And thanks also for bringing it back, for introducing it. Of course, we will further explain and present it during the 4 days. But we support what you said, that is going to be hopefully a way that for countries to adopt the framework, and would be a way for them to fill in some of the data gaps. And then absolutely the importance of administrative data. I think we keep repeating that. It's in the context of the developing a migration data system, but it's also in the context of modernizing the population and housing censuses. I think that component of our work is also moving towards the adoption of more and more register-based census-like data. So I think the systems are converging, and we need to learn, we need to find a way to better work with our colleagues from the specialized ministries to better mine the data that they produce in their daily work. And that also brings to your third point of data integration. So thanks for starting talking about solutions, not just the problems. We want to take stock of the problems, but we are here to discuss and brainstorm on solutions. And hopefully over the next 4 days, that's where we will focus. But let's move to our last speaker, our president, Dominique. No, you are not the last. Please also our 2 statisticians are.
Last.
No. We have 2 presidents here.
I'm last, you're least.
Yeah.
She's leaving me behind.
Not intention. Okay, so first, Dominique, from a statistical office perspective, how do you ensure that the user data needs international migration are properly satisfied, properly met? Thank you.
Yeah. I was thinking how to reply to that question. I came up with the idea of saying this way, in order to satisfy the user needs, we need to satisfy first our own needs. So from the managerial perspective, I would say it was always the most important thing for me. When I started my career at the statistical office, I was a director of the regional branch, so I oversaw some domains only of statistical production. It was clear to me since the outset that the most important thing for me is to secure sustainable access to more and more data sources, so that when I have them, I can just blend them, integrate, do the magic and produce my statistics. If I'm not able to access data that is necessary for myself, no matter how brilliant my staff is, and no matter how good communication of the office is, we will have no real product to announce, to present, to describe, to inform about. And so I think, especially in this regard, we are already mentioning issues like cooperation in between the ministries, for example, which are holders of important administrative resources that may be used for statistical production. It's extremely important to be very close to those possible potential sources of data that we can use in order to produce more insightful statistics on our side. Because what happens very often, that's a problem probably of every manager of statistical office, is that we are conservative as no one else, like in what we do. People tend to do the same things over the years, and after a long time, the sole reason for doing something this year, and the only explanation they can provide is that it has been done for the last 10 years. Nobody really remembers what was the real reason on the outside. And so the second challenge that we have at the managerial level is continuously challenge ourselves in terms of whether what we do is good, where it makes sense, or why we do it, and why we do it in the current context, not why we do it using the explanation that was obvious in the previous contexts. I'm talking about issues which are far away from what we do daily in terms of processing data in order to produce something. But at the higher conceptual level, it's extremely important for us to be able to tackle the changes in the environment that happen all the time. And even in terms of migration, we can have like century old definitions, which I don't think it's good, but anyway, we can have them, but still, in order to be able to measure, even according to those definitions in the current context, that brings a lot of challenges to the measurement systems that we build. And let's take, for example, the issue of administrative sources. They're changing all the time. It's not like the administrative sources of 10 years ago. We in Poland did a huge progress, I guess, in a few recent years in terms of accessing more and more administrative data and actually using them for production of statistics. But we have done also a lot of work on trying to cope with the new data sources from administration, because those other ministries, they're really well paid. They do come in the morning to the offices, and they come up with the new ideas. They create new systems. They make the old system more complex, and they all continuously change everything. And in order to cope with all those things that happen there, you need to invest a lot of time and resources. So first, we need to secure our own resources. When we have them, then we can have this pleasure, because that's the pleasure at the end, that you can play with your data sources and come up with the things that only we can do, which is our advantage. But first thing first, be sure that we have the access to the appropriate sources. And this is something that I'm telling you because I want to allude to a little example that I already mentioned of a dashboard that we've just presented and opened. It's available on our website. The address is healthofrefugees.stat.gov.pl. And on this dashboard, we present partially, and there are different, parts of the dashboard, but one of the parts just presents daily data on refugees and their movements across the country. And if you would ask me, is it the most accurate statistics that we provide? No. Certainly not. We're doing a lot of magical things and we're blending those things in a way that is very innovative. And but we used to say, in terms of experimental statistics is not a pharmaceutical science. It don't have to be precise, because you may poison someone with something. If you just use a little different part of something. But still, it's very informative. It attracts a lot of attention. And what's the most important, we've been able, through the continuous investment in the different domains of statistical production, to create a system that successfully blends those new data sources, including the sources that I'm trying to allude to, but I'm somehow not mentioning them. So now it's the time, the private data sources. And this is the ultimate source of information, which I think we are a little bit privileged in Europe. That's something I'm going to mention later, and in terms of the regulations that we have. But the private data sources as a new and shiny thing that we can use to leverage even further the quality and the depth of statistics that we produce. So coming back to the refugees example, again, through the continuous innovation, we've been able to blend in one system data from credit cards, from telecoms, from administrative sources. We have a very complex and sophisticated apparatus to process data from different administrative sources to create a sampling frame of refugees in Poland, which is not available to any of those offices and will never be available, because we have advantage as a statistical office. You know that very well, that we are very unique offices within our systems. The only office that is allowed to interlink data at a very individual level from different sources. Again, in Europe, we have this famous thing that is called GDPR. And according to GDPR, and the whole public administration system, we're the only office that is able and capable of doing the integration at the very individual level, which gives us a lot of power over anybody else who would like to compete with us on an information market. So that's really powerful. If again, coming back to the core question, what I think is important is that continuous investment into innovation and securing your sustainable sources of data so that you can produce very timely, accurate, and reliable and relevant statistics. Thank you.
Very good. You touched on so many important points, so not easy job to highlight a few. But I think I like the way, the spin that you took in terms of answers. So let's think also of the needs of the producers. So in this case of the National Statistical Office, right? So you really need to have access to the best data, to multiple data for you to create your outputs that are relevant for your data users. So always also engaging with them and asking the question, why do they need this data? What's the purpose? But you touched also on other elements that maybe are not granted for other countries. You touched about resources. So we're talking about certain skills of your personnel. So HR skills, financial resources that probably in the case of Poland are secured, but maybe in other countries there is also that element that needs to be factored in. I also like that in all your answers you portray this sense of moving, the need for change, the need for innovation and modernization. So as a National Statistical Office, we may be conservative per default, but we need to, we cannot be static, right? We need to adapt and we need to move and we need to ensure that we remain fit for purpose. Congratulations on the dashboard, of course, and talking about communication, I think that's nice. Health of refugees, I got it.
Yeah.
So that sometimes we come up with these very weird acronyms that nobody will ever remember, but healthofrefugees.gov.pl, yeah. I'll check it. Yeah. And of course, the next question would be, you said that you blend the different data sources, you integrate the different data sources, you admit that you lose some precision, so you are not so maniac in terms of data quality because it's experimental, but how do you communicate this to your users? Do you get some pushback from the ministries saying, oh, hold on, I don't recognize this number, I don't trust this number? How do you sell it? So it's more the element of communication so that they trust you that, look, maybe we are losing some precisions, but now we have data so much more frequently on a daily basis. And this data, even if not scientifically produced, I don't know what's the right word, they still can be used to inform your programs at the local level.
That's a good question. Generally, we take a lot of care. No matter what I say to you, we have this like a regular part of a production outside of this very innovative processes, and through that regular part, we are trying to behave in a way that builds a very good brand and image of our office. So there's a lot of trust in what we do. And then when we present something innovative, we're very frank and clear about it. That's innovation, that's experimental. So we have this separate line, completely separate line of products that are marked with a different color, even with a different color at all the presentations. If something is violet, that means it's experimental. And experimental, we say we are experimenting. It may not be the best accurate statistic compared to the something that you get 2 years after the reference period. But that's important to notice, and that's something that I always struggle with communicating with our users, because what they really need sometimes is not an accuracy. It's ability to know. It's to know whether something is going up or down, whether it's going quickly or slowly. How does it compare across different parts of that? It does not matter really how accurate it is, except for let it be the same accurate for the reference comparisons and things like that. But the important part of our communication should still be, which is not the case, I guess, and I'm talking now about the overall global community of statisticians, we sometimes take too much attention to really explain the details of things instead of really focusing on what is the important part of the information to our users. What's the important message that they have to infer from what we present? And then sometimes it's really, it's not good that we don't care about what people and users see through our statistics. We need to be involved into a kind of a dialogue with them and tell them, oh, look, this actually doesn't mean that. This means something else. Or take a look at this perspective. That really means it's more complex than the way you've tried to simplify that. That's certainly a problem with the journalists. They oversimplify things which are complex, and so on and so forth. So there's a continuous need for the involvement on our side in terms of not only communicating, but also making sure everybody understands these things the way they should be understood. And those are complex things. And we should never be in the business of simplifying the complex things too much. But that's something, coming back to your question, we have the freedom of experimenting a little bit because we still care a lot about sustaining our regular brand of a trustworthy counterpart.
Thank you, Dominic. Very clear. Yes, trust, established trust that you can build on. So they let you also go a little bit on the side and do your experiments as long as you flag them as experimental, and understanding that maybe it's not in that context, is not really the magnitude or the level, but it's more the trend that they want to be able to have some signals if this is improving, deteriorating, and also absolutely with you, the importance of continuing maintaining a continuous dialogue with our data users and also helping them in extracting the right messages. You talk about not oversimplifying, but I think it's in our role also to ensure that what we say is clear, doesn't lead to misunderstanding, and we help them in telling the story. So I think the media is a key partner. We don't work enough with them, I think, at least from our side. We are the global statistical system, but we are a little shy, I think, but we should, it's more a message for us. We should improve the way we work with our key communication partners. Okay, and now we go to South Africa. So we move from Poland to South Africa with my dear friend Diego. He knows that I joke all the time with him. Diego, similar question. So from the Statistics South Africa perspective, you are the key data producer of international migration and temporary mobility data. How do you engage with your user community, and how do you ensure that their needs are satisfied? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I think that's better. The best way for me to answer about how do we ensure that the production of statistics is being met and that our user needs are being taken care of is that we consult with our stakeholders continuously throughout all times. But it's not so much consultation about what you want and how do you want it, but it's a two-way consultation that involves capacity building as well. Migration is a very niche subject. It's something that not all ministries understand, but all ministries understand that it is there, that it's a real thing that needs to be taken account of. But very little understanding about what it is all about. How do we define a migrant? When is a foreign-born person who is in your country eventually classified as a migrant? What are their entitlements? What should we be measuring? How does that measure feed into policies and programs? So there is this capacity building element that goes into it. At the same time, migration is a very emotive issue that divides people right across the population spectrum. And it's very easy for people to get lost and confused with all the unsubstantiated messaging that is going on. So it's important that the statistics that are produced are able to pronounce a evidence-based summary of what the migration spectrum in the country is looking like. And as South Africa, we produce annual population estimates. We're actually releasing our population estimates report next week. The focus is more on the total population, but of course, migration is a contributor to that, and there is a limited section in that report that speaks to migration. We have conducted a population census, probably our most challenging population census of all time in 2022. Challenging because of it coming right at the end of the COVID-19 period and having challenges with regards to involvement of the public, but also an exciting census because it was the first digital census that was produced. And of course, there are various household surveys where we include migration modules. Secondly, I want to point out that there is a Migration and Urbanization Forum, which the Cabinet has endorsed. And this acts as a place of discussion for all research and data initiatives related to migration. It's headed up by Statistics South Africa under myself, as well as the National Population Unit, who is responsible for the National Population Policy. And recently we published a migration profile report. Those of you familiar with the workings or the initiatives of the IOM will know that this is a report that many countries produce, and in this we have included indicators that range from child migration, permits, education, refugees, immigration, and even safety and security as sub-themes. There are, of course, some themes that we did not include because of a lack of data, and those for example, being on internal displacement and health, which we would really like to improve on next time. And then finally, I just wanted to say that there are these migration modules, which I refer to, that we have included, but we also want to highlight the importance and the strategic importance of administrative data. And as James said, administrative data, as valuable as it is not always produced for the purpose of statistics. So this has been a huge challenge with us in terms of encouraging departments to disaggregate their administrative data where relevant by migratory status, so that we can take advantage of this opportunity. We can contribute to international reporting, and most importantly, we can change the narrative on international migration. This year, 2024, marks 30 years of democracy in South Africa, and so we take advantage of this really epic milestone that we have to reflect back on the past and say, how has our statistical infrastructure improved over this period, and what more can we do going forward to ensure that we continue to do the work that we do? Thank you.
Thank you, Diego. Also, very important points. Well, first of all, you are the first one that mentioned the two-ways dialogue, of course, but even more importantly, the need to build the statistical literacy among our users so that we improve the way we communicate and understand each other. So about the Migration Forum and the Migration Profile Report, are they connected? Meaning that it's the outcome document of the Migration Forum that you get the migration report. And if that's so, it means that all stakeholders are agreeing on the set of numbers and the narrative that you published in this migration report. If you can just elaborate a little bit on that part.
Yes, absolutely. So the way in which the Migration Profile Report worked is that a technical working group was established with representatives from a variety of ministries, mostly those ministries of those themes that I mentioned. And there were two workshops that were essentially held. One, the capacity building workshop to brief members of the group about what migration is about, what is this profile report about, and what data do we need from these various departments. And secondly, there was a further workshop that then validated these numbers and said, yes, these are the numbers that we agree with. These are some of the challenges that still remain. For example, many ministries shared with us just a summary spreadsheet of data that they had. But in many cases, we did not access a database that we can assess the data and we can continue to build from that perspective. So I think going forward, we want to enter into formal relationships that enable the sharing of data so that this not be a one-off exercise and that we can repeat this exercise at any time and we can enhance the capacity of ministries at any time.
Thank you. This is an incredible good practice that I hope other countries can build on, and I'm sure the other colleagues will have questions for you. Okay, so moving fast. Sorry, I'm slow. Second round of questions, and then I'll see if there is anybody else who wants to come in. Maybe I'll stay with you, Diego. Anything that you want to further elaborate on the issue of addressing potential misuse and misinformation of the migration statistics that you publish? You touched on the fact that it's a very sensitive and polarizing topic, so I'm sure you have something to share. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been said by the former chief statistician of South Africa that official statistics is the conduit of trust. And whenever we produce official statistics, we want to transmit trust whilst doing that. So the communication of statistical information is really important. And Statistics South Africa makes use of static reports like PDFs. It has an interactive website which includes data stories and data visualization, so that it's more appeal. It's of appeal to the non-technical consumer. And we have a very active social media presence with regards to the work that we do with accounts on X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp as well. And we use this a lot to engage with the public, whether it be from high school and university students, whether it be people in private sector, whether it be people in government. I think all of them would say to you that they know and are aware of Statistics South Africa and the products that they produce. I think the electronic media, radio and television, is also used to provide expert commentary, as well as to dispel information that prevails. So a recent example that I can share with you are the claims that the size of the migrant population, as well as what the man on the street likes to call the illegal migrants, as well as claims such as stealing jobs, which is the claim that foreigners are taking up jobs which could have been or would have been taken up by South Africans. So So using data from the quarterly labor force survey, using data from population estimates and censuses and a variety of the other reports, we are able to put together a communique that explains this and that shares a little bit of light on it. And through as I indicated, the electronic media, we have an opportunity to explain the story in a little bit more detail and dispel those misconceptions. And I always say to people that if you don't occupy the space where this misinformation is happening, somebody else is going to occupy it for you. So as statistical officers, we have a completely inalienable responsibility to occupy that space and to make sure that anyone who makes a erroneous claim, that claim is corrected and that we firmly establish what the truth is. And then finally, I think that in order to gain trust across society, engagements are also made with various political parties, as well as various governmental entities, so that all are informed about the statistical dynamics of various policy issues, not just migration. As an example, I think last year I had the pleasure to engage with a local government association that represents all local governments and who are at the forefront of migration governance. This was obviously a very hostile meeting. Local governments feeling that they are being overwhelmed by migrants, almost feeling that their schools and hospitals are being overrun by foreign nationals. And I think that this was a clear wake-up call to say that in producing statistics, we must be able to produce statistics at the local level. And we must be able to address the various concerns from a census and survey taking perspective, as well as from an administrative records, because local government has a lot of administrative data that should be exploited. When we talk about administrative records, we're not only talking about national departments. So this was an opportunity to really reach out to local government, try to dispel some of the perceptions that exist across various local governments, especially those on border communities, and to reach out to them with opportunities that we think we can take hold of in order to address their needs on statistics at the local level.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diego. Absolutely the importance of promptly issuing communiques when needed. I think we all agree on that to address any potential misuse and misinformation related to such a sensitive issue. Maybe I switch a little bit the order and Magda, say similar question for you. How can we prevent abuse and provide statistics on this sensitive topic, minimizing the risk of disinformation from your perspective? Thank you.
I'm afraid there's always such a risk. Yeah, I think every country has such experience, especially shortly before elections, that the migration data is used to different issues. But I think it could be minimized. This risk for using migration data in the wrong way. Good idea is to share the statistical data with some experts' comments, where there is interpretation of data, where there's some clarification of methodology, information, what is going from what. And it's also helpful. But I think it's also a good moment to mention the role of, in the case of European Union countries, the role of European Statistical Office, which is the office who standardizes all migration statistics in Europe. We have one regulation which is saying what we should collect in how to produce this data, in how often we should send this information. It's Regulation 862 from 2007 with few amendments. But beside this regulation, there are plenty of guidelines to very specific issues of migration, where we have definitions, some methodologies, information, how it should be delivered, crisscross tables, which we transfer for CSV files. All this work is in the final aspect that is giving comparable, good quality statistics, which are available on the Eurostat website. Every person who has access to internet could get this information and compare the same data in different countries of Europe. So even by creation migration policy, it is very important to compare these informations. But we can't forget that statistical data is only half of the information which we need to create migration policy. And very important is to compare the statistical data with qualitative data. And this is the field for cooperation with academia. So I think also quite important is something what we have in Europe. It's European Ethics Statistical Code, which has some information how to avoid misunderstandings and how to avoid wrong interpretation of data, how to work not having, some influences on your work on the data. So I think all this issue are helping us in producing good quality data without, some misunderstandings. But the risk will be always, and if somebody would like to use migration data the wrong way, there is always possibility to do it, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I think already acknowledging that there are issues and there are risks, half of our job is done. It would be much worse if we were unaware and just thinking that by doing the statistical work and putting out the data out there, we were done. So it's good to monitor. It's good also, if I understand correctly, to rely on these tools and the solutions that are provided at the European level. So you mentioned the European Office working on migration, that they are issuing guidelines on what is needed in terms of data production and dissemination, but then you can also rely on this additional European ethical code that gives you also some recommendations on what to do to avoid the misinformation. So seems like from the Polish point of view, you have some of the tools out there that can support you and ensure that the risk of misinformation and misuse is minimized, but with understanding that this happens, right? And the topic is very sensitive, and I'm sure that as in other countries, you need to monitor and see how the media picks up and how the media may change the narrative that you are presenting. And in that case, I assume you are also getting back to them. Is that the case?
Yes, of course. And always when we have, some discussions about interpretation of data, there's always, possibility to use this European standards. Yeah, it's the last argument by discussion. That sorry, but there is such definition, you can't interpret it in another way this data. So you have to follow some European standards, and it's mostly working.
Yeah, mostly working. That's what we like, right? That's what we want. Thank you so much, Magda. And I'm jumping to Geneva to Gladys. Maybe switching a little bit the angle now, as we are sort of wrapping up from our side, and then I'll give you the floor and see if you have any questions for our speakers. Building on your previous intervention on the data gaps and the priorities from a policy side, maybe you want to tell us a little bit more what ILO is doing to address these data gaps. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And thanks for your reminder that we should all also be putting solutions on the table. And to that effect, I would like to say that first of all, in terms of prioritizing collection of data, we would posit that we would focus on collecting data that views migration through the lens of human resources and development. In this way, we can further ensure that policies are not only responsive to the needs of a labor market, but that they're also contributing to sustainable development goals, which I really think is what we're all in this for. Development goals absolutely for the country of origin, and also, good labor market outcomes in potential countries of destination. A priority for us as ILO is precisely to start to address some of the critical data gaps. In this regard, we are currently updating the guidelines concerning statistics of international labor migration. These guidelines serve as a foundational standard to promote data collection based on agreed concepts, definitions, priority topics, including the topics that I mentioned earlier, and classifications that we hope will support countries in filling important data gaps in labor migration and enhancing comparability across countries and regions, which I think speaks to some of the challenges that were pointed out by others. We do hope that the revision of these guidelines will be completed by mid-2025, and that we hope that these will also be closely aligned with the revised UN recommendations on international migration statistics. Again, to the point on which areas to prioritize, I think we all absolutely recognize that in the current economy globally, workers are increasingly looking for job opportunities beyond their home countries, and they are looking for decent work and a fair shot at life. But many concerns have been raised about how labor mobility happens and how workers are recruited. And for that, an important data gap that needs to be addressed is precisely on the costs of recruitment that, again, have raised concerns for us, particularly when it comes to lower skilled migrant workers. SDG indicator 10.7.1 measures precisely these costs, and the ILO has been partnering with countries to try to improve and validate their methodology. We've been preparing model tools and guidance. A growing number of migrant sending countries are now implementing surveys that measure SDG 10.7.1, but we're not seeing the same level of activity among migrant receiving countries or destination countries, and this for us is a worrisome sign. Without data on fair recruitment in countries, countries will lack important actionable information on how they should be shaping bilateral and multilateral labor migration agreements, how they should shape policies that promote better business practices and a level playing field for employers. They won't have information to track due diligence and decent work in global supply chains. And if this gap is not addressed, it can actually affect the effective implementation of the Global Compact and migration in coming years. And so we would stress, as we like to say at the ILO, the way you start to measure decent work starts with even how you were recruited. That is the origin point of decent work. You're not going to be fairly recruited into indecent working conditions. And so again, this remains a very valid indicator, an important one, and again speaks to the obligations that we have under implementation of the Global Compact. Just one further point, we've also been actively working as ILO to support countries in building their capacities for labor migration data and collection and analysis that cover topics that are important for the promotion of decent work. An important gap is also to, again, move from collecting the data and analyzing it to applying this data to inform policy. And on this front, the ILO is supporting countries in establishing and maintaining labor migration data and mainstreaming this data into national labor market information systems so that decision makers and planners can have regular access to comprehensive labor market and migration data. We have LMIS projects supporting many countries and have developed processes that ensure national ownership and sustainability. And the ILO is further preparing practical guidance for member states based on this accumulated experience. So again, again, we've kind of waxed poetic about the number of challenges that we have, but we do believe that prioritizing the development of comprehensive and reliable data on labor migration is going to be essential for shaping inclusive and sustainable policies. And again, one of the ways that we can start to kind of overcome some of these challenges is precisely by fostering collaboration, using spaces such as this, and further enhancing data capabilities. We can use all of this to address the complexities of international labor migration and ensure that migrant workers' rights and their contributions are fully recognized and protected. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Gladys. All well noted. Thanks, first of all, to help us in prioritizing like the big list, the long list of priorities and data gaps associated with those. I absolutely agree with you that talking about decent work, we need to have information and knowledge on the cost of recruitment and making sure that there is fair recruitment behind these job opportunities that people are seeking in different countries. And that links well to the work under the SDGs indicators, because that's an element, it's a metric that countries have agreed, have committed to measure and monitor. So I think that's absolutely important for us as a global community to highlight that this indicator is not really, the information that we have on this indicator is not completely available yet. And so this is one of the priority data gaps that we should address as a community. I also like that you highlighted that it's labor migration data, producing labor migration data, but to feed into a information system. Talking a little bit about data integration and sustainability. So it wouldn't be just a one-time survey, but it's something more long-term that requires also specific investments. And then the guidelines, the famous ILO guidelines concerning statistics on international labor migration. We have seen different versions, finalized versions, but I understand that there is a new revision that is ongoing, almost finished. And in that context, there will be complete alignment between the UN recommendations that will be discussed over the next 4 days and this set of guidelines specifically looking at labor migration aligned with international migration data. So we'll learn more about them. I believe Elisa is also with us and she's in charge of the publication. So more on this later on. But let's go to our last speaker. So we finish with our host. And maybe Dominique, you talked about the use of new methodologies, some innovations also in data sources. You touched about the experimental statistics. What do you want to leave to our audience? What do you want to share in addition with our audience for other countries to benefit from the lessons learned, the good and the bad? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. That's a very important question for me for many reasons. And I've been always believing very much into international collaboration. This has been one of my two priorities when I came to my position. One was international collaboration, and the other was the push for innovation. And through the international collaboration, what I see, it brings in a lot of benefits. I'm not going to cover all of them, but certainly if you want to innovate, that's good. If you expose your own stuff to the international practices, to international innovative projects, so that they can learn from those projects. Also, sometimes by providing something, by delivering, when we are engaged ourselves into doing something for the international community, that gives us this opportunity to discuss with our counterparts from the other countries. It forces us to understand why they're saying things they are saying. Sometimes, those language differences are playing an important role, and it takes time until we finally can recognize, collectively what we're aiming at together. It's extremely important. But then at the end of this process, this overall capacity or ability to understand things and to imagine we go further is much better. It improves. So I would say, if you want to benefit from, for example, our experiences, I think I would stress the role of international collaboration. We have it in fundamental principles, by the way. We are very open about our own innovation. And we allow everybody to steal from us. If you want to steal from us, just do it, because I have to be quite frank. I enjoy and love stealing from all of you as well. And we do that all the time. And that's how the great ideas are being created. But last but not least, I would say, again, because I have this managerial bias, so I see things from my silly perspective. And from my silly perspective, I think it's very important to state this priority of international collaboration explicitly in your communication, in your mission, or whatever documents you have there. Just communicate to your staff you want them to collaborate and bring all those interesting experiences back. And there are many platforms for those collaborations globally. First and foremost, if you want to learn from our experience, I would suggest working with Francesca, because she's great. I'm sorry, Francesca, I have to say that. You need to find people like Francesca and try to work through them. There are not too many of them, even at the international level. Sometimes it's a tricky thing. I don't want to go into that direction now, talking about that. But sometimes people are great, and that facilitates collaboration that I was mentioning before. And that's really opportunity. I would suggest to you to take this chance and work through the groups like that. It's really great to watch you working. But there are other platforms as well. Of course, I need to mention the one I'm co-chairing. That's High-Level Group on Modernization of Official Statistics in the UN ECES. In Geneva, we have a UN CEBD community of experts of big data. Innovation these days is mostly about those new data sources, and this community of experts is very useful, I would say. And there are some other UN agendas. We have ILO with us. I know ILO has been always very strong in statistics, so we have our colleague Anna Strzelecka, who's been always going to ILO for many years already, longer than me. So these are useful playgrounds. Globally, I would have to advertise here International Association for Official Statistics. I'm sorry for that. I'm president of that at the moment. You can find a way of collaborating also through those associations as well. At the EU internal level, the European Union, we have other tools like ESSnet projects, when the Eurostat is investing a lot into our mutual projects that we do together. But of course, we publish everything online. All the codes are published online. If you're interested, you can find those projects and find those resources as well. But on the external EU issues, or externally, EU is also offering to the countries the so-called twinning projects, TRIEX projects, and internships. We bring in a lot of internships to our office as well. So these are the tools that are very effective in terms of knowledge sharing. But I would like to also stress at the end of my intervention the importance of collaboration at the national level with the other offices, with the ministries, like with my colleague Magdalena. It's extremely important to have a good relationships with them, because it all starts with your urge to feel responsibility to inform appropriately your society. If you feel that urge, that quickly leads you to realization how important are those most important stakeholders, because if they are not well informed, these are risky guys. They can make bad decisions, and when they're not informed well, and it's our responsibility to do so. Sometimes they may not even be aware of that they don't know something, and don't blame them for that. We are experts. This is our role to be a curators of information to deliver. So it's good to build good relationships that go beyond the chit-chat level, but really end up in a collaboration and taking common projects. We have those projects with we have examples of projects like that done with the again the same ministry, but in the other domains. Like we have a big we finished a big project last year that's on public services, but it was huge project, and it ended up with creation of a very unique database that I think most of the countries don't have it about public services at a very local level, and do that, and that will work well. And last but not least, I would say what is extremely important at the national level, because we talk about those relationships, it's just simple, something that is forgotten very well, I think, in our community. It's just statistical system governance. We have a very good governance system in our country because I'm responsible as the president of the office for the overall system. And even if the other ministries are doing some statistics, to some theoretical degree, I have a supervision over those, at least practically in the process that is called the process of creation of the statistical program, which is very transparent and inclusive. All the stakeholders gather and they continuously work on what's included in the program. That's really useful if you are able to set up a governance system that actually forces you to this collaboration, if not done yourself. And last but not least, we're talking like recently a lot about the new term data governance, and those are extremely important as well, because those are the areas in which your access to the sources is defined. And again, at the European Union level, we're kind of like privileged because we have this change now being implemented in our statistical regulation. It's called 223, that will grant us an access to privately held data, which is a really advantage. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. To try to summarize, but I think I'll just pick on the fact that it is allowed to copy in statistics. So please, let's do it. All of us, let's learn from best practices, good practices, bring them home. Try them in your own context. Of course, you cannot just take solutions that work in Poland or in other countries and implement them. You will first pilot them, you adjust them, but that building on something that has already been experimented elsewhere would definitely make your efforts, would minimize your efforts and make your solutions more cost effective. So copy is allowed, and by the end of 4 days, hopefully all of you will have the chance to tell us how you produce your migration data, your data on temporary mobility, and together we will be able to highlight some fantastic solutions that others could benefit from, copying them, implement them, adapt them, and use them. You have the chief statistician from Poland, and we have also a great team of demographers and migration experts with us that will tell us how they do it in Poland. Then if you want to have a study tour in Poland, I think we promote also the internships and study tours. I'm just joking, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is something that we can also support as UN. So sending some of you to other countries to really have a hands-on experience, spend a week or two and come back home with all the to-do list to try and experiment in your own country. So that's also something that we could brainstorm together. And finally, we talk about international migration data, but again, in a context of an information system, something that is sustainable. And in the context of all the great efforts on modernization that your National Statistical Office and your National Statistical System is going through. So it's not migration data in isolation, it's migration data in the long run and in the context of all the other important works that your Statistical Office is doing. So with that, we still have exactly 10 minutes, and I would like to give you the opportunity to ask questions to our great speakers. Yes, please, because this is the first time we hear from you, maybe you introduce yourself too. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Claire. I am Stacey Ann Robinson, representing Jamaica. I am the Director of Censuses, Demographic and Social Statistics at the Statistical Institute of Jamaica. I have a question for Diego. I'm very interested in the, you call it the Migration and Statistics Forum. I know you may have touched on some of what I'm about to ask, but I just wanted you to expand some more on who are usually invited to this forum, the outcomes, purpose of the forum, and what are some of the topics that would usually be discussed at such a forum and the format of the forum. Thank you.
I'm Anne Singleton from the University of Bristol. I've supported the work of the expert group and I'm really delighted to be here, so thank you for inviting me. I've got one general question for the panel and then one specific question for ILO, for Gladys, if that's okay. The question is about how to integrate systems of knowledge exchange so that lessons can be learnt from the local level up to through the national and the regional, global regional level and to the global level. And I'm wondering how the focus that Gladys suggested about the labour market data on SDGs would be primarily for the countries of origin and on the labour market for the countries of destination. And I wondered if we could conceptually think about how to look at those, integrating conceptually the way of understanding labour migration, that it sees SDGs as a priority for countries of destination as well, and labour market issues also being for countries of origin. So it's just a general question for everyone, but also a specific question on that point. Thank you.
Joanna, anybody else? Maybe we can take another one and then I give the floor to our speakers. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, greetings for everyone. I am Miguel Ojeda of INE of Chile. I have an operational question from Poland and the other countries of Europe. How do you measure entrance and exit within the community space? For example, we did immigration in Amsterdam, in Poland, and don't check it of any documents. How do they know we are there?
Okay, I may have got it. So it's because you enter in through Germany. That's you're saying.
Poland.
You entered through Holland and then you came to Poland and there was no checking on your passport. So that's the issue, the EU context. Yes, how do you? Maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on this.
You just simply spy.
You spy. But yeah, maybe that's, of course, it's this famous question right now that there is a free movement. How do you get those numbers? That also Magda pointed out, it's important to look not just at your number for your countries, but in the context of EU, the European Union, to compare with the numbers of migrants in other countries. But how do you get that if people can just move without leaving a trace? So good question from Miguel from the National Statistical Office of Chile. And we have Inga from Lithuania. Inga.
Thank you very much. And I have questions regarding for the Poland. You have mentioned that you receive the privately held data, and how detailed do you receive such kind of data? It's on personal level, on more aggregated level. Do you get the data for free? And how long did it take for you to negotiate for that data? Thank you.
I think all of you got some questions. Some were general, so all of you can answer, and some were specific. Why don't we start maybe with Diego, just because you were the first one to ask?
Okay.
Be asked.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The Migration and Urbanization Forum was established after 2016 as a result of an opportunity that I saw, that there was a need for integrating a lot of the conversations that various stakeholders were having about migration with migration statistics. Sometimes it was a matter of misinterpretation or misunderstanding of migration statistics. There were also international and regional reporting obligations, and we felt that this needs to be done from one central place. So who is in the forum? Mostly national government departments, also local government is involved, but we also include academia, The NGO civil society sector is extremely strong in South Africa. And so we involve them. And as you know, a week is a long time in migration. A lot can happen in a week. And so the themes that we speak about can be very broad. They can range from issues of refugee protection. They can talk on issues of labor migration, on the impact of migration at the local level. It can be on issues of xenophobia and on perceptions of migration. So those are some of the topics. The outcomes of the forum, well, the migration profile report that I spoke of is one of the outcomes. But I think that moving forward amongst the stakeholders, we would need to agree on what a desirable outcome would be as we move forward. In terms of the format, we try to meet every quarter with the migration profile report dominating activities over the last year. We seem to have met less frequently, but usually we would meet every 3 months. And in these meetings, we would share or discuss any new research, any opportunities for data collections or outcomes of those data collection exercises that we have had in the country, on regional opportunities, regional reporting, global reporting, as well as where do we stand as a country in the global community when it comes to international migration opportunities and initiatives. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell what the forum is involved in.
Thank you so much, Diego. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe we go to Geneva with Gladys. There was a specific question for you. Thanks. Just 1 minute answer. Thank you.
I'll try to be brief, but I really love this question actually, because I think what Anne raised is really important. While we're talking or using this Sustainable Development Goals here to make a point, really this can be measured from the perspectives of country of origin or country of destination. And I think it has important implications for both and important impacts for both. So for example, from the country of origin side, it's important for workers themselves or migrants or potential migrants to make good choices, and knowing that the costs of the migration for them is important for them to be fully informed and to make sound decisions for themselves. We also think that using this as a it's a helpful measurement also, and it requires information of the cost across the full migration and recruitment cycle, including formal and informal costs. That kind of depend on the survey data, but it's incredibly informative across main migration corridors. Again, for some of these reasons, understanding these costs can be an important contribution for bilateral and multilateral discussions that govern migration and that work across corridors. And also, again, I would stress that it's important as a country of destination to understand, how you're creating an equal playing field for your employers. And crucially, I think, when we talk about improving narratives and, sharing data and trying to, kind of showcase the good economic outcomes that we get from migration, it's also really important to remember that human beings have to also relate to migration in particular ways, and that applies to the people who are migrating, and that applies to the host communities. So, for example, it's not just the threat of a job loss. It's also this idea that if you're being undercut, if the conditions are unfair, if you're bringing workers in purposely to undermine people's economic stability, those are all really potent forces as we've seen that play out. And so getting this right, understanding what are the costs and what are the risks and what are the protections that need to be built in, a lot of that actually is captured through calculating recruitment fees and costs. And so again, we need to both have the data and use that to inform narratives and to inform policymaking, but crucially, we need to use that as a way to understand whether we are creating the impacts that we want, and that is applicable to both the people who migrate and the host communities on the receiving end.
Absolutely, data for impact and for changing lives, right? To improve lives. Let's maybe go to Poland. You had a couple of questions. I don't know who is going first. This is also your last opportunity.
Maybe about the Schengen area.
Yes.
We have such common Schengen area in European Union. We could travel just with our IDs. Without passport. At the same time, third country nationals who's got a Schengen visa or resident permit in any European Union country could also travel around this area, but not longer than 3 months. Yeah, you could go for holiday or to visit your family in other country without starting the work in this another country. Of course, it's challenging according to irregular migration, but we have very close also cooperation between policy and border guards. So there's a lot of exchange of information. And those irregular migrants are mostly funded when they lodge application for asylum. It's mostly going because we have also common IT system with fingerprints of persons who applied for international protection in Europe and with information in which country. And it's working so that first country of entrance is responsible for such person. If you have issued a Schengen visa or there was any stay in your country of this person, you are responsible for taking the responsibility for this application, and you have to take back this person from other country in Europe. I don't know, it is okay?
Yes, if I can jump in, I mean, you remember my stupid joke about spying, but it's really something that I also tell to my students. For example, it's not a statistical office and intelligence; it's an intelligence unit. So we're trying to find all the resources necessary to actually find out where you are in Europe, and there are many sources. And I know that at our level, you know, we do much more sophisticated things that they even know at the ministerial level. But because there are 2 different ways of monitoring the movement of people. A short-term, movement is it's of course we have some border surveillance. Even though you pass the border and there was no border, like in the sense of somebody controlling you, there are cameras, there are other devices that help us to assess what's the traffic on the border. You know, all the passages, and then we have telecom data as well to monitor. So, for example, the refugees dashboard is based on a telecom data. We can easily identify those that have SIM cards from outside of a country, but we can also identify those foreigners that are registered within our country, have our national SIM card, but we know they're not national, they're not citizens. So, for example, this one, through payments as well, we can assess that. If you use a credit card, we got you. We got you. Or if you use a credit card, we got you. And then what we do is, interestingly, it's a peculiar thing, and probably one of the very few in the world that would do that. We do the survey on the borders as well. So we catch some of the people that pass the borders and just interview them in terms of like, there's a lot of people coming, and they used to be coming from Ukraine, from Belarus, not from them at the moment, but from Lithuania as well. You know, that there's no border to buy a lot of stuff in Poland because we're a cheaper country than the neighboring countries, you know, from the citizens' perspective. So there's a lot of inflow of foreign currencies to Poland, and we have to assess this because it's extremely important for the balance of payment. So we do those interviews on the borders as well. We had this system for at least 15 years already, and so it also provides us with the information that we can easily grasp into this kind of a monitoring. And then longer terms, you know, we have those this approach of traces of life. If you come here and you stay here, you eventually end up in some office or in a doctor, you know, in an MD doc, you know, medicine doctor or whatever. We catch you, and then we can assess this through the sophisticated modeling that you probably stay with us, and that's how we produce our statistics. And then within the Europe as well, we have those kind of like how do they call it, mirror statistics that we kind of like collaborate in between the offices, and we try to reconcile the numbers together, taking advantage of who knows what, for example. So we have this very close collaboration. In terms of the second question we got was particularly addressed to me, I guess, in terms of granularity of private data sources. We kind of like negotiate with the providers something that we call micro aggregates. So we agree that they will provide us from, for example, from telecoms data that is aggregated to the district level, to the like very municipality or district level in a hourly or a daily intervals, whatever. And then we have those matrices of movements of people from the telecoms, the same from the credit card companies as well. We just agree on some particular way of aggregating data, and we get the aggregated, but very detailed aggregated data we use as a proxies in our models then, because it's never used straightforward. It also feeds into the more complex models. And if we pay for it, no, we get it for free, and we try to trick our partners into thinking that they do it for the public good. No, of course, we're not tricking them. We're just initiating those projects under the umbrella of doing good for society, and of course reminding them that eventually in the regulations that we will have the access. So it's good to now start to collaborate and think of how can we probably operationalize something that is coming in the legislation already. That's another thing, and the yet another channel of accessing that we're considering now at the moment is through the other trusted partners within the public sector as well. So we have a very good collaboration with the National Bank of Poland, which has a very good collaboration. You know, they keep a rifle in front of all the commercial banks, and they can do whatever they want. So we try to collaborate with National Bank to get the data we want from the banking industry, for example, that interests us. So there are many ways. You have to be very tricky, and as I said before, everything becomes more and more complex, and you have to have a diversified set of tools to get your resources. Thanks.
Yeah, we should have a longer discussion, right? But we can have it soon with the coffee in front of us. But do you establish these relationships at the personal level? Do you need to go very hierarchically up and down? What's based on your experience? What's the best way for those countries that would like to have access? Everybody wants to have access to this privately held data. So do you have to also establish this rapport with them, or needs to be institutionalized?
Oh, yeah, it depends on the people in the corporations. So we have one of those big corporations that everybody knows the name of. Usually search something, and so we couldn't even call them, for a couple of years. They didn't pick up the receiver when we were calling, anyway. But some of them are more open, and some of them are more aware of the fact that they should contribute somehow to society. So, for example, we have that's not a secret. Visa is establishing a big kind of like processing center in Poland. They hire like more than 2,000 people, that the objective is more than 2,000 people, and they have established the position of like someone who's responsible for the whole European Union for collaboration with the public sector. And this position is Poland. He's a Polish guy, so of course it makes us a little bit privileged to have easier access to. But those corporations, along the lines of this social, responsibility ideas, ESGs, whatever, are more and more aware of the fact that that's good to collaborate and to deliver something, because they eventually do something. And yet another way of kind of like bringing them on board is also trying to think of the projects we can do together, which are beneficial for both sides. Because certainly we have a lot of interesting resources they can use and to leverage their own businesses or to provide their own products as well. So you have to be very kind of like open and innovative.
Thank you, and thinking out of the box. Thank you so much. I think maybe one last word from you, James. Either you answer some generic questions that we got from Anna, or at this point, your last word before we go to coffee.
Thank you. I think we're all ready for coffee. Just one thing, I don't know if Anne's question was answered, but I mean, ideally, an immigrant from one country is an immigrant to another, and we would know that. But the way the systems are set up, it's each country collected its own data. So I don't know how to really answer your question about how do we do this unless there's a incentive for countries to communicate information on migrants, like they do in the Nordic system to some extent. And I don't know, maybe we could talk about that later, but what the advantage for the Nordic system is, that they actually, the way Sweden knows they got a migrant from Norway is they have a common ID, and they're able, the two statistical offices communicate that information. Otherwise, I think it's up to the international agencies, researchers, to somehow make sense of all the different National CISC office data. But that's my final
Thank you.
point.
Thank you so much. And of course, we will continue this discussion at the coffee over the next 4 days. I also hope that you enjoyed this panel discussion as much as I did. And please do join me for a round of applauses for our speakers. So we got the 20 minutes, 30 minutes break. There is a coffee generously offered by our host that is waiting for us outside. And I think we are also planning for a nice picture. Today we all look fresh and elegant. Tomorrow, jeans. No. Thank you. Thank you, Gladys. Thank you for joining us. I hope to meet you soon. Thank you. All the best.